everyone. So before I get into today's video, I want to mention that starting next week, my posting schedule is probably going to change, and that's because I got myself a new job. So just a quick little story time. About a year ago, I started working for a guy I knew. He created a cleaning company and he hired me as his very first employee. And I actually really liked working for him. I was cleaning a haunted bar after hours by myself, so it was really creepy and awesome. Unfortunately though, 2 days before Christmas, my boss ended up selling his cleaning company and I had been looking for work ever since. I was applying everywhere, online, in person, anywhere that had a hiring sign, I was applying to it. But I never heard anything back from anyone, and I was getting really pissed off, honestly, and I was feeling really discouraged, and I started asking the universe for help. And I wasn't just asking for money, I was asking for a good job.
Hope I get a jobby, Freddy. I got my fingers crossed.
I was so tired of being broke. Even when I was working, I was still broke. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I had to ask for help sometimes, and it really sucked, and I was just tired of it, and I wanted to be independent for once. About a month later, which was last week, I saw an ad for a job fair, so I went, and I walked out of there with the best paying job I've ever had in my life. I had applied to this place many times over the years, but I never got the job, unfortunately, but this time I got the job, and I was so shocked that I got it. It all happened so fast, but once I realized that things were about to change for me, it felt like I won the lottery. Luckily, I'll be earning this money and not winning it because, as you'll hear in this video today, a lot of the people who win the lottery feel cursed afterwards, and nothing but bad luck follows them. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of the people who won the lottery and how they absolutely regretted it afterwards. And we're going to start off with Jack Whitaker. On Christmas Day in 2002, Jack Whitaker won a staggering $314 million, which was the largest jackpot ever awarded to a single Powerball. After taxes, though, he walked away with about $90 million. Jack was already kinda rich before he won the lottery. He had worked himself out of poverty, and eventually he was the owner of a West Virginia contracting company. He did a lot of cool stuff with his money though. He was donating to help set up charitable foundations. He was donating to help churches being built. He even hooked up the girl who sold him the ticket. He bought her a brand new car and gave her a huge pile of cash. Since he had so much money, he wasn't really that careful with it, and he almost had $500,000 stolen out of his car because he kept it in a briefcase, just chilling in his car, and someone almost stole it from him. And then shortly after that, he lost $200,000 in a similar way. Just a few weeks after Jack had $200,000 stolen from him, he was hit with the horrible news that his granddaughter, who he was very close with, died from a drug overdose. And then 2 years later, her mother, who was Jack's daughter, also died from a drug overdose. And he was so stricken with grief that he began drinking. And soon enough, Jack became such a severe alcoholic that his wife left him. Jack would say that his granddaughter and his daughter were basically spending his money for him. They always had nice cars, nice clothes, and obviously endless drug money. So a few years go by, and it's really no surprise to anybody that Jack has nothing left. And he would say that after losing his wife, his daughter, and his granddaughter, that winning the lottery was the worst thing that's ever happened to him in his life. Abraham Shakespeare, yes, that is his real name, was an ex-convict and a high school dropout who could barely read. In 2006, him and a coworker went to a convenience store. Abraham stood outside, but he gave his coworker a couple of bucks to buy some scratch tickets. When the coworker came back out and him and Abraham scratched off their tickets, he realized that he had just won $40 million. Abraham was more than generous with his money. He would give it to anyone that asked, but his kindness did not give him immunity to the lottery curse, and his troubles started almost immediately. First off, the coworker that Abraham was with that day got all pissed off that his ticket wasn't the winning ticket, so he brought Abraham to court and tried to say that he stole the ticket and the jackpot from him. Luckily though, Abraham would win this case, but it was just the beginning of his problems. Everybody was begging Abraham for his money all the time, and soon he felt like his closest friends and family were just using him. And then one day, he met a girl named Dee Moore, who convinced him that she wanted to write about his experiences. She wanted to get his story out there. And then she also suggested that it would be a good idea if she were to manage his money from now on. Abraham was so beaten down by this point. He was so depressed and vulnerable that he agreed to let this woman take over his finances. And of course, she started spending his money on herself. She bought herself a couple of nice cars, and she even took possession of his home. Apparently, robbing this man blind wasn't good enough for Dee Dee. She ended up killing Abraham and burying his body under a concrete slab at her boyfriend's house. She even went to great lengths to try to make it seem like Abraham was still alive by sending out fake text messages and trying to bribe his family to make it seem like they had just talked to him or seen him or whatever when the cops came by. Regardless of her efforts, she was caught and convicted of first-degree murder, and needless to say, Abraham would have probably been better off with the $5 in his pocket rather than buying that ticket that day. Billy Bob Harrell was a nice Texas guy who fell on hard times and was really struggling after he failed to become a minister. It really seemed like his luck had turned around though after he won $31 million in the Texas jackpot. He now had a way to provide for his family, and he quickly put his money troubles behind him. He was also incredibly generous with his money. He would help his friends, his family, his church, and anyone else who asked. However, the request for money was endless, and soon it put a huge strain on Bill and his wife. Billy Bob had made some pretty bad investments, and the cries from all the outsiders begging him for money all the time put such a strain on his marriage that his wife filed for divorce. Not only that, but his entire family was no longer getting along all of a sudden, and Billy would say, much like many other lotto winners, that winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to him. So one day, Billy Bob is supposed to meet up with his ex-wife for dinner, but he never shows. And she would later find out that he decided that he had had enough, and he ended it all by firing a shotgun into his own chest. Most lottery curse victims fall on hard times because they overspend or flaunt their money. However, Jeffrey Dampier Jr. seemed to be doing everything right when he won $20 million from the Illinois jackpot. Jeffrey, his parents, his second wife, and his family all moved to Tampa, Florida, where he invested in a popcorn company. He would name the company after his daughter, and it was actually doing incredibly well. Jeffrey was known for taking care of his whole family, including his sister-in-law Victoria and her boyfriend. He paid for their apartment, he paid for their new car, he would pay for their vacations, but obviously this wasn't enough for them, and soon Victoria and her boyfriend started planning on how they could get their hands on more of his money. One day, Victoria asked Jeffrey if he could stop by her apartment because she was having some car trouble. When Jeffrey was there, her boyfriend came out of nowhere, attacked him, and tied him up. Together, they stole thousands of dollars from him, and then when they were done robbing him, they took him down to an alley while he was still tied up, and they shot him in the head to try to make it look like some random crime. This little plan of theirs didn't work though, and they both got caught, and they're now both serving life sentences for kidnapping and murder, along with a few other charges. In 2001, David Lee Edwards was an unemployed former drug addict who won $27 million in South Florida. He immediately went through all of his winnings though, buying things like a $1.6 million home in Palm Beach Gardens, 3 racehorses, a fiber optics company, a Learjet, a limo business, a $200,000 Lamborghini Diablo, and a shit ton of other luxuries. David and his wife started using drugs again, and they had numerous run-ins with the police and would be charged numerous times for possession. He ended up losing everything. He was sleeping in a storage unit surrounded by human feces, and he would later die in hospice care at just 58 years old. A 46-year-old man from Chicago named Aruj Khan died the day after he won $1 million in a 2012 jackpot. An autopsy would later reveal that he was poisoned with cyanide. Literally less than 24 hours after he won, someone tried to kill him for his money. His sister-in-law and her father were actually the suspects in this case, but no one was ever charged with it, and they would later split his winnings and his properties between his daughter and his widow. Everybody at some point in their life wishes that they could win the lottery, and I'm not saying that every lottery winner is going to die a horrible, lonely death. I am saying, though, that it happens enough to where you should really be careful what you wish for. And now we've reached the end of the video, so if you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up and let me know. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, I leave all of my social media stuff in the description box if anyone's interested. So on that note, I hope you guys have a great night, and I'll see you soon.